Will AI replace software developers? Well, eventually, yes, they will. In fact, I would be more surprised if I get to the retirement age and AI hasn't replaced most tasks people perform. The problem I see today is that to a non technical person, the tasks that large language models, such as ChatGPT, are performing look and feel impressive. When it comes to content creation, it is a huge jump forward with many applications. When it comes to solving math or science problems, it also does pretty well. In the business world, there is a lot of hype around what large language models can do. The phrase AI is being thrown around as it is the latest hot topic and everybody wants to get in on that juicy action. This is like when the words blockchain, big data, cloud, Web 3.0, or many other revolutionary words get tossed around. They have an impact, but that impact is often a lot less than the hype around it. People who want money tend to generate a lot of hype. This is nothing new and is not that surprising. Fundamentally, large language models have limits to what they can do. Those limits are imposed by how they work. A large language model is simply using a very large math calculation to come up with the next best word. Let me repeat that for clarity. Large language models are just providing the next best word given some math. The fact that it seems to work so well is very impressive. But at the end of the day, it's not exactly what we mean by intelligence, but is instead mimicking intelligence. More importantly, that mimicry is from existing human generated content, but is slowly getting replaced by more computer generated content. This is a big problem for large language models, as additionally high quality training data is going to become hard to find as the amount of non human content grows. Large language models are not going to come up with novel scientific breakthroughs or reason out complex problems at the bleeding edge of research anytime soon. Those are areas where artificial general intelligence will shine. Large language models are not that, and I struggle to grasp as to how they will get to that point given their inherent limitations. Sure, right now we are all going to make up everything as AI powered, but that's just a flashy way of saying what we were already doing. It's like the word smart suddenly became AI, and voila, it's a totally new thing that nobody was doing before now. Now, the problem right now is the idea that large language models are better than a typical programmer at a software company. That part I am skeptical about, and I feel like the claims are vastly overinflated. The reality is, as somebody who has developed software for decades, I find most of my job is not writing the code itself. Coding, surprisingly, is the easiest part of the job. The hardest parts are getting to the point where I can write the code. You don't look at an author and simply say, yes, writing words is the hardest part when creating a great novel. No, it's coming up with a compelling story, getting into characters' mindsets, setting the tone, keeping the story consistent and interesting. Those are where most of the time and effort is spent. Similarly, in software development, this is needed to understand the existing system, learning the libraries being used, dealing with older proprietary systems, collaborating with the team to make sure everyone understands what needs to be done, and figuring out how to turn the business requirements into a reality given all of the constraints of the existing system. This is one of the reasons why greenfield work is so highly sought after, because you can ignore most of the challenging parts. And likewise, large language models are really good at making prototypes or writing code with minimal context. As you start to try and frame a complex problem or to figure out missing requirements, you will often find that you have to ask questions and work out how you were going to solve the problem. Large language models will often just make up the requirements, skip over contradictions, or make bold assumptions when you ask them to perform a task. Very rarely do I find a large language model will ask clarifying questions or seek to understand a problem fully before spitting out an answer. Again, it's just predicting the next best word. It doesn't actually perform any real thought process or problem solving. Asking questions and making sure you understand the problem is a classic example of the difference between a less experienced developer and a more experienced developer. For those who are in the field, you may have heard of Claude 3.5, Sonnet, OpenAI o1, or an AI called Devin. I have certainly played around with some of them, and in general, they can perform some fairly complicated tasks well. The problem I've encountered with them is that when they get something wrong or misunderstand what you want to do with them, they end up struggling with coming up with a correct solution. Yes, prompt engineering is an important thing, and making sure you frame problems in ways that are good for these large language models means you can get some pretty good solutions out of them. Do you need a quick prototype? Yes, large language models are absolutely great at providing that. Need help trying to figure out what might be wrong with the code? Yes, large language models can be helpful, but not always, as some of the more complex problems can be the result of multiple unrelated issues, which is hard to convey even to a human. Large language models are good at taking natural language input and performing actions which naturally flow from the input. Again, they are really good at predicting the next best word. In fact, they are so good at it, they might even pass the Turing test. They are good at coming up with descriptions and summaries based on simple statements and can even solve some reasonable logic problems. However, if you are going to go deeper, this is where things get less impressive. And when dealing with software development, I find large language models are a good replacement for, say, Google or Stack Overflow, but getting it to actually write the code that is both concise, works with the existing code base, and is logically correct is challenging. This is where I see the limits of large language models. If you find as a developer you're often looking up how to write the code, then yes, for the task that you are doing, they are a much faster way of getting it done. However, if you are more experienced and don't need to look up how to write code as often, they will feel very verbose and will not give you what you want. My experience today as somebody who develops software is I find it to be good at helping, but not necessarily doing my work. I find when I get solutions from large language models, they have naive comments in the code or include some dead code, which has no actual impact on the solution, or even fake the solution and appear to give the right answer. It also tends not to handle edge cases unless I specifically ask for them. Edge cases are usually where most of the bugs in software are found, and this can be problematic when working on larger systems. On the positive side, I often find out about features and languages I was completely unaware of. They also can show me features in ways that I have never used them before. This is actually impressive, and one of the main reasons I enjoy using it to help me write code. However, when I try to use it to actually do the work, I find I often have to refine the solutions, and it may forget previous steps or exclude previous requirements, and can be frustrating once you get past the initial steps. This has sometimes led to it confidently giving you a solution which is wrong, and you aren't paying close attention. You might end up with a solution that causes issues that go undetected. I do find it useful for answering specific questions, but I often find I'm better off applying the changes and fixing it up myself. The text prediction is one of the newer features based on large language models that I'm finding in most IDEs. It is actually pretty good. I found for repetitive tasks or boilerplate, it does a reasonable job of finishing what I start to type. This is the same idea as when you type out a message or an email and your messaging app or email client completes the sentence for you. For the most part, it is right, but sometimes it gets it horribly wrong because, again, it's guessing what is the most likely output based on the input. When you notice it gets something wrong, those are fine because they're easy to catch and fix. The times it's scary is when it provides a prediction that looks correct at first glance, but ends up being very wrong. It is like when you autocorrect your misspelled word into something you probably didn't want to say. Sure, in a text message, it can be funny. But if you're building financial, engineering, or medical software, it isn't funny. As the technology gets better, I expect to make more use of it. But as it stands right now, it is just a major upgrade to the existing code completion tools. The main benefit is I can ask it questions and actually get reasonable answers. But the harder parts of building and expanding software are still very well in the domain of humans. I am excited to see how these tools will become more capable, as I enjoy being able to ask questions and get decent explanations. Before these large language models, I often had to guess at why I was getting certain suggestions, or had to spend a lot of time searching for answers, which I can now get in seconds. This is why I'm more excited about the technology than I'm fearful about it replacing software development jobs. And on that note, have a good day.